Now I want us to work on a date picker that will help us to select the ranges of when we want to book a room. We have a component in Shadcn that will help us do that. Very easy to use actually. So right here, if I say range, okay, not range but date, you'll see we have date picker here, and I click on it. If you just want to add a date picker where you select only one date, you can easily do that. And this is the code here. So we already have these components created for us. Now on the side here, you'll see examples. You have date picker, we have date range picker, and this is exactly what we want, where we can select a range of a date. So if I come to code, you see we already have it here, date picker with range. So I just copy that code. Actually, before I copy that, we will need to install various stuff to do with the date picker. But since I have already copied, I can just come back right here and we will add a component. So since our date picker will be available only at the room here, we can add it here. Okay, so I'll say date range picker.tsx. We go ahead and paste everything right here, and you'll see it complains because of all these. So we need to fix those by installing the various stuff from Shadcn. So if we go to the installation here, the date picker is built using composition of popover and calendar components. See installation instruction for popover and calendar. So we don't have a direct installation. We need to install these two other components. So I'll open this on a new tab and this one on a new tab. So popover, right here, we just need to run this command. So I will copy that command in npm. That is what I am using. And I'll go ahead and I will paste it there. Very nice. Then I'll come back now. We go to calendar and I'll copy this command for adding the calendar to our project. So back to VS Code, it's installing popover. So I'll wait for it to complete and then I'll add the calendar. So once it completes, just add the calendar like that. And I hit enter to install that one. And there we go. So everything is installed and now I can hide that. So the next thing I will do is to go to our room card right here. Now remember, at the room card there is somewhere that we performed a check at the footer here where we said is hotel details page, and here we didn't include anything. So this is where we are supposed to include that date picker that we just created. So in here I'll just hit enter and I can start by adding some class names to this div. So I'll add a class name. We'll say flex, we'll flex to the column, and also we'll have a gap of 6. Very nice. Now right here I'll go ahead and I'll add a div, and right here I'll also add another div like that, and then in here I'll have the date picker now. Okay, we save, and now we can actually preview at our rooms. It should update. So let's refresh, and you can see right here we now have our date range picker with the popover just like that, and with this we are able to select a certain range. So we need to do some customization so that when we actually select the date, it goes to our state, which is our global state we created on the previous episode with Zustand. So whenever we select those dates, we want to update the start date here, the end date here. Okay, the first thing, when we come to this one, you'll see that we have its own state right here. We have date and set date. The thing is, we'll take the state out of this page. So I'll just cut it from this page, and then I'll go to the room card, and at the top where we should define state, I'll define the state here. Okay, we import this date range, we import it, then I'll just make use of use state instead of react.useState. Then we'll have the date set date. I will not include the default values, so I will remove the default values like that. And now we have date and set date. I'll pass these down to our date range picker via props. So I come right here at our date picker with range. I'll say date will be date, and then right here I'll say set date will be set date. Then here we had forgotten to add a title here, and I'll say select days that you will spend in this room. Okay, just some information there. Then right here I can add a class name that will add some spacing, so margin to the bottom of 2. Okay, very nice. So let's now go to this component again. So already we are receiving one prop, which is a class name with this particular type, but since we'll be passing several props, I can define an interface which will be much cleaner. We will be receiving the class name that we are already receiving, so class name, which will be optional by the way, and I'll copy these right here, this type, the one that they already passed, and I'll use it there just like that. Then right here I'll use semicolon. We will receive the date, which will be of type date range, like that. And right here I'll say undefined, like that. And finally we'll have the set date function that will update our date, and we'll say react right here dot dispatch, and right here I'll say react dot set state action. Okay, still inside these angle brackets we'll have another angle bracket, and here I'll say date range all undefined. So that is the type for this set date there. Okay, so here this function is receiving the props, so I can remove that like that. And now here we will destructure the class name. We'll have the date, we'll have set date full colon date picker props, like that. And now you will see that our component still works normally, although all we have done is to move our date into our room card right here. So right here I'll have const total price, and we will set our total price. This one we'll make use of use state, and we will invoke it, and by default we'll have the price as room dot room price. Okay, so by default we will get the room price, and that will be our total price. But we need to perform some calculations. Whenever we select a certain date range, we see how many days we have selected, and we multiply those prices. So we will do that in a use effect. So right here, maybe before our functions, right here I'll call use effect from React. We will invoke it, we will pass an arrow function in here, and we will have some dependencies array. So the first thing we will pass is when the date changes, we want to recalculate the total price. Then whenever the room price changes, which by the way I don't think it will be changing, so but just in case we will pass it there. And also if we include or exclude breakfast, so here we'll have include breakfast. So this is not defined yet, but we can add a state for that. Okay, so right here we will say const include breakfast and set include breakfast. This one will be equal to use state, and we'll set that to false. Now we come in our use effect here. We will check if we have all the dates that we need for us to perform the calculation. So we'll see if our date exists and date dot from exists and date dot to exist. So it knows that we have date dot from and date dot to because of this date range type. Okay, so this date range type make sure that our date will be an object that have a from and a to. Okay, so in here we go ahead, we will check if include breakfast is true and room dot breakfast price exists. So if they exist, we will perform a calculation here where we will include the total room price including the breakfast for all the days. Else we'll perform a calculation where we don't include the breakfast. I'll set the total price. I'll invoke that. Okay, there is one thing that we need to do again. We need to calculate the number of days that this person will spend on this hotel. Before we call this one, right here, after we confirm these dates exist, we will come right here and we will calculate the number of days. We'll say const day count will be equal to, we have a function that comes from date and f's called difference in calendar days, and this comes from date fn's like that. And here we will pass date dot to, and then we pass date dot from. So we pass two dates, and this function will give us the difference in the two dates, and it will give us how many days that are there. Okay, and now right here we can actually add another piece of state that will hold our day count, and in here we'll just pass 0. Okay, and then now right here, after we calculate the day count, we can update that value. So I'll say set days to be a day count like that. Okay, so after set days, I'll come right here and I'll say if day count and room dot room price. We perform that check, and then I remove now these two in here. Let's start with this one, it's easier. So we'll say set total price will now be equal to our day count. Okay, and we'll multiply that with our room dot room price. So day count and the room price will give us the total price. But we have the case where we might have the breakfast included, so we add a calculation here. Now that will be day count, we multiply by the room price, so include that in brackets, and we will add here day count, and we multiply this by the room dot breakfast price. Okay, just like that. So now this is for the case when we include breakfast. Okay, now for the case when we don't have any day count, I'll include the default room price. Okay, which is for one day. So right here we'll say set total price to be room dot room price. So we can display the total price and how many days that are there that have been selected at the very bottom here. At our card footer, we will add some more properties here, or elements. We'll add a div. We'll say total price full colon. We'll add a span, and right here I'll say this $sign. Then I'll say our total price from state. So I simply display it. After this span, I'll say 4 and I'll include another span like that. And now in here, I can specify the number of days. So I'll just say days from our state, just like that. And right here, I'll say days. Okay, let's add some style. For the first span, we'll add a class name and we'll say let the font be bold. And also for the second one, we will do the same. Class name, font bold. Okay, now let's check if we have like a price added. And look, select days that you'll spend in this room. We have pick a date, and then you see total price is this one for 0 days. So we include like the default price. Actually this should be 1 day, but so far it's working. Let's add a checkbox that will include the breakfast, and then we'll fix that one later on. Right here, I'll add these curly brackets, and we will say, do we have room dot breakfast price? So if this is greater than 0, we'll say and right here we'll add a div, and inside this div I'll have another div, and I'll say do you want to be served breakfast? I'll add a class name here, and I'll add margin to the bottom of 2. So I close it. We'll have another div here. I don't know why it doesn't open and close it, so I'll close it manually. And we can add a class name. I'll say flex, and items will be at the center like that. We'll say space -x to be 2. Then in here I'll go ahead and include a checkbox from UI checkbox like that. And right here I'll have an ID, and I'll say this checkbox is for breakfast. We'll have on checked change, we will invoke an arrow function. Here we will have a value, and we'll use that value to update our include breakfast value. So set include breakfast, we invoke that and we pass our value. So sometimes this value can be a number, therefore include those two exclamation mark. Sometimes it can be 0 or 1, so include that, since the type for this one is a boolean. I'll include a label for this particular checkbox, and I'll say include breakfast. We will add some styles for this one, and also I'll say HTML4 to be breakfast. So what this does is that since this ID here and this HTML4, their value are the same, so when I click the label, it will also check or uncheck the checkbox. Now right here I'll add a class name. Let's first save that and see what we have. Do you want to be served breakfast each day? So when I click on these, look, it checks these, and also it adds some price since we have breakfast there. Okay, very nice. It's actually working nice. I think I can just say 1 instead of 0. This will show this for 1 day. One thing that we can do is that for this particular date picker, when I click on here, you'll see we can click even the days that have passed. Okay, we can click even on November and we are in December or something like that. So we have to disable days that have passed. And how can we do that? So we just need to, okay, I'll save this particular room card, and we need to come to this date range picker, and this calendar have some default values that we can pass. Right here we have the default month, selected, on select, number of months, So you can display how many months you show right here. Right now we show this month and next month. You can show 1, you can show 3, which is nice. So 2 is good. So now right here I'll add this one from date, and I'll say new date, and we save that. Now if I come back, so let's manually refresh to remove this one. So now you'll see that these other dates here have been disabled, and we can only book from today up to a certain day. I'm happy with that. Now later on we'll also add a functionality where when we book a particular date and we actually pay for that, it will be disabled as well, so that other people don't book a reserved room for a certain days. So next we will create a booking, and we will create a payment intent. Okay, so we will like show a button here to actually book this room.